So the center is housed in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, but is a model of interdisciplinary collaboration between the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences and the College of Arts and Letters. And that's thanks to the support of the deans of the colleges, Dr. Rafiq Muhammad and Dr. Terry Bowman, who should be here later today, actually. At least I know that Dr. Bowman said she would be coming after they go to the Art of Dreaming. So we have a competing event tonight, the Art of Dreaming event. I would like also to thank the board members, some of them might be here tonight, for their continuous support and diligence actually in helping me organize those events and activities. For the past 20 years, SIMES, the center, has been able to build an international reputation as a flagship for international dialogue and academic excellence for students and faculty, as well as the local and international communities. The center supports research, lectureships, curriculum development, and community outreach in order to advance the study of Islam and the Middle East. This year, board members of SIMES were interviewed by national and international media outlets such as the LA Times, local news channels, Al Jazeera and Al Hurra, Canadian Vice News, among many other media outlets. The center contributes to research and scholarship by housing and contributing to the peer-reviewed journal Arab Studies Quarterly. Also, the center offers an interdisciplinary minor and certificate program in Islamic and Middle Eastern studies, including the instruction of language in the region, or languages actually in the region. And Professor Danny Dweri is very, of course, involved in these programs. So this is about the center, but you know, without further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker and also film maker director tonight. Ms. Farah Nabulsi is a British filmmaker. She's the daughter of Palestinians living in diaspora who, unlike the millions who continue to remain stateless in refugee camps, were fortunate enough to make a home in 1970s Britain. Born, raised, and educated in London, Ms. Nabulsi began her career as a banker with J.P. Morgan, but went on to build a children-focused business that she ran for 10 years. As a Palestinian in diaspora, Farah always thought she understood the justices suffered by her people, but seeing it firsthand during a visit to the occupied Palestinian territories changed her in a deep and overwhelming way. And we will have the chance later, of course, to talk to her and you know, expand on those notions. Witnessing the treatment of children was particularly harrowing, and she kept thinking, what if that was my child? She instinctively knew that offering sympathy and occasional charity was no longer enough. And after months of frustration, not knowing how she could make a difference, she founded a media production company, Native Liberty, whose artistic works could help others see and feel what the Palestinians experience. In her own words, and I'm quoting, the arts play a crucial role in changing the world, and film trumps them all. It gives voice to the silenced, and hearing those voices helps build the mutual understanding needed to effect change. In June 2016, Ms. Nabulsi launched oceansofjustice.com. You know, her website, you can visit it actually, it's very, very amazing. Bringing together a website and her short films that draws attention to the many ongoing injustices that the Palestinians face. So tonight we will actually be screening her first 3 films, and the program is as follows. We will start with Oceans of Injustice, which will be released in May of 2017, and it's a 10-minute film. So we have a sneak peek, so that's exciting. The Nightmare of Gaza is also a short, not film, but a short audio journey. And I don't want to give you more about these, you know, productions, because we'll see them in a minute. And lastly, today they took my son, which is another short film that deals with the issue of Palestinian child prisoners in Israeli military detention. And this film actually has been screened at film festivals around the world and has the endorsement of various notable figures, like intellectual figures like Noam Chomsky. So we are very lucky and fortunate tonight because we will have a sneak peek at those upcoming films. And the films also has their own advocacy website, as I said, oceansofinjustice.com. Sorry, I think I said the first time Oceans of Justice. So it's oceansofinjustice.com for you to check out later. So first, please join me in welcoming Ms. Farah Nabulsi. We will start this screening, which will take place one after the other. So we'll dim the lights, and then we will have the Q&A afterwards. I'm Palestinian. I lived actually more than half of my life in Palestine. And the Israelis once came and took my 14-year-old brother, who was younger than me, in the middle of the night. And it just brought back my many memories of my father and my mother actually reacting to that experience. And then they took my 21-year-old brother, who was in his 4th year of school. I mean, he was able to make it up and persevere, but you brought up a lot of emotional outbursts in me, so I apologize. So I guess we'll open it up for question and answer. And I would like to start by asking, after this emotional journey, really, you lived most of your life, and do you want to come here? Maybe, probably. We can stand in front if you want. Thank you. You lived most of your life in England, in what I assume comfortable life. You were a successful banker. And what is intriguing really is to ask you what inspired you, what intrigued you to actually take this kind of transformation in your life. You quit doing your successful profession into focusing on issues of injustice for the Palestinians.
So is this working?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. And at the back, you can hear me? Good. Okay. Yeah, so basically I went to Palestine, which is the occupied Palestinian territories, a few years ago for the first time as an adult. So I'd been many times as a child, and then I didn't go for 25 years. And then I went for the first time as an adult. And I was quite clued up before I went there. I was read up, I knew my facts and my figures. But there is no substitute for witnessing injustice firsthand. So the trip was a very, I mean, without being cliched here, like the first film says, it changed me. I was very humbled by the trip, but I was absolutely appalled. From the checkpoints, to the permit systems, to the illegal colonies, these settlements all over the West Bank, to the blockade of Gaza, to, you know, it just overwhelming. We're talking about entire populations of people. So I came back to my, what I can say to you is a life of privilege. And one of 3 things can happen when you experience or witness injustice, whether it's for an individual or on a national scale, on a macro level. You can either pretend you never saw it. You can turn a blind eye. You can get on with life. You can be apathetic instead of empathetic. Life is tough enough as it is, and move on. Or you become extremely depressed and frustrated, and that was happening to me. So I couldn't let it go, but I couldn't walk away. So I was getting very depressed. And then there's a third option, which is the one I eventually chose, which is you can take that frustration and that pain and you can channel it into something positive, something creative maybe, something that maybe could affect change. And that's what I chose to do. So I'd written these pieces purely organically, therapeutically. I didn't write them to make films. I wrote them as a reaction to the experience I had when I traveled to Palestine. And I'd set them aside. And in my frustration of trying to figure out what to do, I came across them. And I thought, well, long story short, I could make films out of these. I could do something to tell the story. So that's how I think I answered that. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to read something from the center, actually, SIMES, Center for Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies. We decided to bring Nablesi because it is very important to educate the American people on how our tax money contributes to the suffering of thousands of Palestinian children in Israeli military detention. According to Defense for Children International, Israel is the only country in the world that automatically prosecutes children in military courts.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me then tell them about that without reading from the paper. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no, okay, because at some point. So basically what you have to understand from the last film specifically is you see in the film, you know, the kid picks up a stone. And I think most people in the USA actually have this sort of stereotypical Palestinian terrorists, Palestinian stone throwers. There's no context given. In fact, I read a report that in less than 5% of news reporting on Palestinians is context given, which is occupation. Decades-long illegal, internationally illegal occupation of entire people. So the context isn't given. So this boy is picking up a stone. But you saw from the UNICEF report at the end is that most of these children are actually taken between midnight and 5 a.m. in the morning. They're not throwing stones. They're actually in bed, which should be the safest place on planet Earth for every child. And these kids are taken. So it's more of a systematic way of breaking down a society. Children are the most precious thing to anybody in any society. So what's important for you to realize is, say the child is throwing a stone. You can take an illegal Israeli settler child or an illegal Israeli settler adult and put them right next to a Palestinian child or adult, and you can give them the exact same stones, and you give them the exact same target. The illegal Israeli settler child or adult will probably be protected by the Israeli military as he tosses that stone. And if he gets a spank, you know, on the hand, or they do decide, okay, we need to kind of punish this kid, or they will take him into a civil legal framework. The Palestinian child will be taken into a military detention system. Do you see the difference? Military. There is no other country in the world that tries children and puts them through a military detention system that by very nature cannot offer the necessary protections for children in international law. The Treaty of the Human Rights for Children is the most widely and rapidly ratified convention, human rights convention in history. It's the most precious thing in the world. So why are Palestinian children being treated differently? Why are they being put through a military detention system? No child should be put through it. I'm not suggesting that the illegal Israeli settler should be put through a military detention. No child should be put through any military detention. So there's context for you on the...
Okay, we'll open it for the audience.
Grab my water. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Questions? Oh.
Farah, first of all, I want to really thank you for coming here and sharing your personal experience and the experience or bringing us something that many of us are not familiar with. I have a question for you here that you could be asked, or I want to speak on behalf of the minority in the class. Maybe one person out of 200 people or so on who may be feeling a little bit shy to ask this question.
Sure.
Because that may not be the most appropriate environment, but I like to speak on behalf of the minority. So the first question is there a difference between a Palestinian Muslim and a Palestinian Christian in terms of suffering? And the second question, what would your answer be, or what would your narrative when somebody says, well, these people are blowing themselves up and then killing Israeli children in a pizza restaurant or so on. So one is, how much is the shared suffering? Is it mostly Muslim, mostly Christian, or is it shared? And the other thing is, well, how about the other side? What is your take, or how do you explain this to people here?
Okay, so the first question, there's no difference between a Christian Palestinian child and a Muslim Palestinian child. So again, in the media, it is presented a lot that it's Muslim Palestinians and that's it. And that's, again, context is missing. So Palestine has got the three religions. Before the establishment of the State of Israel, you had the majority Muslims, and you had Christians, and you had Jewish people, all living together. After the establishment of the State of Israel, you then had the Israeli Jews who were originally Palestinians, and then you had, of course, all the colonists, as it were, coming from abroad. But the Palestinian population consists very much still of Christian Palestinians and Jewish Palestinians, and they are treated exactly the same. And so they are put through military system, they are put through everything. So it's the same thing. There is no difference. That's, I mean, the short answer. And sorry, your second question, just repeat the sort of short version of it for me.
Somebody says, well, you know what, maybe an Israeli person of Jewish descent. So somebody could say, well, maybe an Israeli parent of a Jewish descent also lost his child or his daughter in a pizza restaurant in a suicide attack. And what's your take on this? Of understanding.
Okay.
And I'm saying,
right. I mean, that's an intense question, right? Yeah. Look, my answer to that is that I'm really not interested in painting people with some broad paintbrush and generalize it. I'm far more interested in looking at the very real life experiences and societal conditions and circumstances that people live in that might draw them to act the way they do or to carry out certain atrocities as they might. So for me, I don't like to pass judgment in that sense. I prefer to understand the why. And again, for me, to compare people's pain and suffering is a fool's errand. I would like to think that I have true understanding and empathy for everybody's suffering. So for me, it's not just Palestinian suffering. The entire conflict and beyond is painful for everybody. My focus, though, is to draw attention to the Palestinian narrative, because it's a narrative that is seldom ever heard. And it's a narrative that people do not really understand because context has not been given. So when you come back and you think about why people act the way they do, it's extremely important to look at context. Context is everything. I'll give you a really silly example. I'm just going to make this up right now. Man kills wife with machine gun. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Man kills wife with machine gun as she was trying to machete his 3 children to death. Whole other context. So context is everything. So when you're receiving news in the media, if you're not given context, it's absolutely meaningless news. So when it comes to Palestinians, I'm afraid, especially mostly in the USA, less so in Europe, but still to an extent, you're not getting context. You don't really understand what's going on. So when you think about it, if you have Palestinians resisting or revolting or acting the way they do, and there's no context, well, then it's baseless hatred, it's baseless violence. But if I give you context of decades-long occupation, a 10-year siege of Gaza where 2 million people are being literally held hostage, there's only limited important amenities coming to them, and they are being controlled by air, land, sea. 10-year siege of Gaza. When you're given context, suddenly you realize that this is a reaction to occupation. This is resistance. It's a very different context. So you saw in the film, the kid picked up a stone, he picked up a rock. A woman's house was being bulldozed. Illegally bulldozed. They were being kicked out of their house. It's not to justify the stone throwing. It's to say you have to examine people's real life circumstances before you pass any kind of judgment. And I would like to think that I also look at the other side. However, I do not feel it is incumbent upon me to give a voice to the other at the moment. That voice is plenty. I'm trying to give a voice to the voiceless, to the silenced. And that's where I come from, in that perspective. And I feel that Palestinians, it's not that I feel it, it's actually a fact. Any form of colonization in all of history, so this is not my philosophy, this is the proper theory of how colonists actually carry out their colonization of any indigenous population, is that they first have to dehumanize the indigenous population that they mean to colonize. and then they brand them as barbarians, and then they eventually deny that they ever existed, literally rewriting some of the history books. So in the case of the Palestinians, this is, I mean, it's Zionist, it's political Zionist settler colonization. This is fact. The original Zionist colonizers, before the creation of the State of Israel, were very honest about what they were doing. You had one of the foremost Zionist leaders, Ze'ev Jabotinsky, Vladimir Jabotinsky, in 1923, in his very famous essay, The Iron Wall, stating very clearly, Zionist colonization, even its most restricted, must be carried out against the will of the indigenous population or be abandoned. So they named it. This guy has more streets named after him in Israel than any other person in history anywhere else in the world. He's a national hero. So the ideological birth mother of the State of Israel is colonization. It's the worst kind of colonization because it's a settler colonization. What does that mean? It means acquiring as much of the land as possible while ridding it of as much of the indigenous population as possible. What do we call that today? Ethnic cleansing. So this is the basis of what, you know, the founding ideology of the State of Israel. It's fact. So if you're a colonizer, you dehumanize those you mean to colonize, you brand them as barbarians, you deny they ever existed. So when it comes to Palestinians, they have been severely dehumanized. But the truth is they live, love, breathe, suffer just as I do, just as you do. But we forget that because we don't feel empathy. And why don't we feel empathy? Because they've been dehumanized. And the colonizer does that because then they can carry out any and all atrocities, and people of goodwill don't care. Which would explain, sorry, I need the water, the siege of Gaza. 10 years. Where on planet Earth can you hold 2 million people in an open-air prison, apparently? I think it's worse than a prison, but it's just not acceptable. But if you don't perceive the people as human, they're subhuman or they're animals, then... So, I've gone off track, way off track, but, you know, that's my...
Thank you very much. Okay, questions? Yes.
First of all, I want to say you did an amazing job with
Thank
all
you.
these videos. I really appreciate it. Secondly, I strongly believe that the first step to solving any problem is realizing there is one.
Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me. Ah! Okay. Just a little, just a little. It's just really bright. No? Just a little. I haven't slept in a long time, and I'm 12 hours ahead of you. I'm severely jet lagged. Go ahead.
Anyways, I think you bring this realization to light in a very connectable way, and I like that. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time something like this is being shown, and I think a lot of this information is known, but not a lot of change is being done. Do you think that's because not enough people know, or do you think even if a lot of people knew, it wouldn't matter because there are other forces that have?
Look, I think it's a combination of two. I don't think that much to do with Palestine has been in this format. There's been a lot of documentaries, and then there's been feature films that are specific stories. And the reason I've chose to do things this way is because I decided that I wanted to use art to speak to people. Art speaks to people's hearts. We know that. And I feel that you can have, like you said, you say, we know all this, or some people know that. It's one thing to have the facts and the figures, and you're speaking to people's minds, but if you haven't opened up their hearts, there's no point. It's like you're banging on iron doors, and no one can hear you. So for me, it comes down to let's speak to people's hearts. When they start to understand from an emotive point of view, then their minds open up, I hope, and then the facts and the figures speak for themselves. So I'd like to think my approach is slightly different, but maybe not. I do believe that most people do not know, and one of the most important things is just to inform. It's informing people, because I've been screening at film festivals, and then I get the Q&As, and people are like, I had no idea. Or, okay, why is this happening? Or, you know, so it really comes down to informing, but informing in an intelligent, creative, emotive way Because after all, we are emotional creatures. And, you know, I think you have to engage people from the heart first. This is my opinion. I don't know if I answered you.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to like follow up with something or
have
push me a
another
bit further?
So are you going to be going back and doing further research and work? And real quick question, is this your life calling?
I like that question. So firstly, yes, my intention is to do a whole series of shorts, each one addressing the individual injustices. So you mentioned the website, www.oceansofinjustice.com. It has the name of the first film. The first film was a sort of introductory, metaphorical, if you can't go physically yourself, come on this journey with me, let's begin. Today They Took My Son is specific, child prisoners. And the idea is to continue to do numerous shorts on house demolitions, on Gaza, on the wall, and so forth. And I already have 4 scripts waiting to be made. And to be clear, none of them have me in it, and none of them have my voice in it. So just kind of want to clarify that. Okay? That was just me. Cheaper that way, though. So that's the plan. Ah! That can't go. It's going to go on the video. Is it my life's calling? I really believe it is. I changed the trajectory of my life. I feel I'm actually doing something that might affect change. Like Mother Teresa said, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters and create many ripples. And that's where I'm going with this. This isn't about, I'm going to do it all, and it's about me playing my role in some kind of change initiative, because silence for me is not an option anymore, and apathy is not, and it makes me a better human being, and I want to be a better human being. So I'm in a place where I am getting that self-fulfillment, yes. It's frustrating, it's tiring, I don't know where it's going to go, I'd love to scale it, but I do believe this is my life's calling, yes. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. My
Hi.
question is, what usually happens to those children that are taken?
Right? So, I mean, you can see from the UNICEF report, they can be processed, they can be basically held for a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, a few months, years. They can even be held under something called administrative detention, children and adults, where you are basically held without being known or told what the charges are, and without being brought in front of a judge or anyone. You can just be held. Now, these children, most of them, when they're actually charged, so it's one thing to be taken, but then they're actually charged, are brought in front of a judge at some point, and there's something like a 97 or 98% conviction rate. And usually, the proof or the reason they're convicted is their own confessions. Under duress, coerced. Sometimes it's, hey, just sign this and we'll send you home. Other times it's sign this or we're going to hurt your parents. So there's a, this has been reported in the report. A lot of children have said, they told me I'd go home if I signed this paper. Or they told me they'd hurt my mother if I didn't sign this paper. So it's usually actually their signed confession that gets them convicted. And it's usually in Hebrew. So actually most of the children don't even know what they signed. And then they can end up in jail, in a military detention for weeks, months, years. And females as well, by the way. It's not just a boy thing, just so you know. Majority is boys, but so it's criminal. It's criminal. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you mentioned, you talked a lot about context. Now,
Yeah.
I know America, we get a lot of our information from the news, and we take it as face value. Where, without having firsthand experience with all of this, where would you say to go to find that context? Without, again, you can read one side versus the other when it comes to news, but that only gives us so much. Again, where would you go to find that specific
Right.
context to learn more about any situation, let
Right.
alone just this one?
That's why I built the website, to be honest. Of course, you can find context from numerous. You can find context from numerous books, and whether it's Israeli written books, Palestinian written books, international journalists, and so forth. You can find. But the reason I did oceansofinjustice.com as a website is because I wanted to offer context in sort of one place and in the English language. And hopefully in other languages as well. So I plan to translate into other languages. So please do go to the website, because you'll see a deconstruction of occupation. When I've used the word occupation here, I pretty much can see it can draw a blank actually on most people. What is occupation? Unless you've lived in occupation, what does it even mean? And like I said, context is everything, and context is a decades-long occupation of an entire people. So if you go to the website, you'll see occupation and these human rights violations deconstructed. It's a very simple website. And that's where my films will eventually also go. And there's a whole bunch of resources as well under each injustice. So if you wanted to go deeper, you can find books, studies, sometimes video, and I'm building it more and more. So do visit it, because it's pretty intense, but you can literally go through it within an hour and a half and understand what's happening with regards to the Palestinians. So there's where I'd offer you my context. But it's everywhere. It's just that you have to, unfortunately, look for it, because the media is not giving it to you. It's that simple. Yeah.
For decade, the history.
Or maybe closer to your... Yeah,
Yeah.
just put it closer.
Egypt have fought for Sinai in the history, fought Israel, and now we've seen that there's some organization in Palestine that using this conflict, this problem, for their own profits, like Hamas and so on. So they would like have money from the world, and basically they use the Palestinians as like shields and to gain empathy. And few months ago, I guess there's one of them, and one of I think Hamas killed like Egyptian soldier or like 2 Egyptian soldiers on the border. For my question, do you think it's even getting worse and more complex than when it started?
Okay. Look, I think the situation is very complex. I don't think it's more or less. I think sometimes it's, you can say we're in more difficult times, quieter times, and so forth. I think with the siege of Gaza for 10 years, that's absolutely appalling. The fact that sort of there is that political party of Hamas within Gaza doesn't mean anything to me. You have 2 million people. And the Hamas is a group of people who have chosen to act a certain way for various reasons, and we can discuss that if you like. But we're talking about populations of people. So to me, the siege of Gaza is unacceptable no matter which way you look at it. So to me, the situation is very dire when it comes to Gaza. And overall, the way I see it is that I think no matter how complicated or not complicated, there is a very simple underlying element, which is occupation is wrong and it's illegal. And everybody deserves to have equal rights, human rights, freedom. So it's not so complicated, if you get my meaning. It really isn't that complicated. Stop illegally occupying an entire people. And if you want to talk one state, great, bring it on, and let's give everybody equal rights. So I don't think it's that complicated. I think there are elements that complicate things, but so yeah.
It's sort of a reiteration of a previous question, but what sources do we have to kind of combat this ignorance or even stupidity that would say that these things aren't happening, these people are terrorists, these people are this, that, and the other? that would turn a blind eye? Like what, because you have your website.
Well, you know, we do not live in any ordinary time in history. Literally, a communications revolution has been placed into the palm of every single Western citizen. And this power of the phone, the tablet, the internet, allows you to basically bypass the gatekeepers of power, bypass the gatekeepers of lies and false narratives. So it's there. This is, you have to, you know, have that will to kind of read up and find out more, and, you know, there has to, and there are so many sources in that sense. So it just takes a little bit more energy in that sense. But it's there, it's available to you. If you asked me that question 30 years ago, it'd be a much harder one to answer. But now, there really is no excuse in that sense, you know? So, yeah, but still go to my website, though. And also, you can subscribe on the website, and you will be notified when the films are released online. And then the other thing you can do is share them. Because again, you may then discover something new today, but it's really important that people are not selfish with the information they get. On the contrary, if you want to affect any change in the world for any injustice, not just this, you have to share, you have to talk, and you have to disseminate information. And again, this communications revolution is at your fingertips. So use it, you know?
I want to piggyback off what he said. I'm getting like feedback. Lean this way. Okay, so you mentioned in your video that people struggle, like they lose cellular connection or there's no data connections, but even when they have uplink to the internet, I've heard of issues where these people's websites are getting DDoSed and their information can't get out to the world because you have governments and other people trying to suppress their voices.
Right.
How do you combat against that?
The other revolutionary thing is social media. So, you know, there's so much going on social media beyond sort of news outlets and that kind of thing. You can literally, if you wanted, friend someone in Palestine, and literally they will be showing you live video footage of, you know, tear gas. Do you see what I mean? It is there. It is there. Now, I realize that there's restrictions. In fact, right now, there's some seriously undemocratic legislation that is trying to be passed within government to suppress, you know, internet and social media and the kind of information you can access. So the window is, who knows, guys, for how long we're going to have this kind of open communication and information. But while we have it, we can use it. So I realize that there are restrictions. You just have to keep digging and use social media. That's also, you know, obviously all of it's social media, but, you know, you can literally, if you wanted, get in touch with people on the ground, and you can understand more. So,
comment on social media?
Yeah, and
I
you.
don't need a microphone. I have a very loud voice. I'm a professor. So, the point I want to just mention is that Facebook, unfortunately, was very involved in the silencing of many Palestinian voices, and they actually signed an official contract or, you know, agreement
With Israel.
with the Israeli government after months of negotiations, and this was only a few months ago, to actually go after Palestinian activists and their Facebook pages, and they took down a lot of these Facebook pages. Now, but I agree with you that there are other outlets, and people persevere and they resist and they don't give up. They keep on pushing them.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to ask you one question, but also share some piece of information. Well, regarding what you have said, so important is to realize that we are the instruments of our own knowledge. And these revolutions of media and communications are also a terrible tool, for propaganda and the dissemination of misleading news that controls people's minds and make them do things, you know. So yes, as we realize that this is power in our hands, it's also the power in the people who controls the media that you use, that you consume, and do you live your life around it. I remember, as you do, that we grew up in a different time where we were not slaves of these tools of communication, misinformation. Going back to what I wanted to, I would like you to share what you know about this. People in the United States get very surprised when they realize that in other countries, people are very well informed of what is going on in Palestine. I'm from Spain. People in Spain are aware of this. And they realize, how come we are not? How come here we don't know so much as in other countries? For example, could you share information about the non-profit organizations that are in other countries? They try to bring aid to Gaza, but that aid is confiscated, is taken, is assaulted by the Israeli government. For example, that happened a few years ago. A ship was destined to arrive in Gaza and was taken by the Israeli commando operatives. And these are non-profit people working just to bring aid to children, families in Palestine. So could you share that, if you know more about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know snippets about it. I can't sit here and give you full details. The fact of the matter is, you have the siege of Gaza, and you have anything going in or out being controlled by Israel, and you have had initiatives from various nonprofits and NGOs and NPOs trying to bring aid or trying to break the siege and so forth. One ship specifically was even attacked, and there were people killed, and these were all unarmed individuals who were coming philanthropically just to help. And money is controlled, and everything is controlled. I will point out at this point that you do realize more than half of all US foreign aid goes to Israel. I mean, that's huge. That's more than the next sort of 4 or 5 countries combined, or whatever it is. And the next two countries after Israel that receive the most foreign aid from America are who? Does anyone know? Egypt and Jordan, on either side of Israel. There's no coincidence there. So, you know, the majority of your tax money when it comes to foreign aid is going to Israel, which is one of the most affluent countries in the world, actually. I think it's number 20 or 25. Why? So these are the kind of questions you need to ask yourselves, and these are the kind of, the kind of information you need to kind of dig deeper into. So, yeah, I mean, sort of back to what you were saying. So, yeah, this is, I mean, in Europe, Europeans tend to know a lot more about what's going on. They're more galvanized and they act a bit more, but it's not enough even, to be honest. Yeah, it's very, very difficult situation for NPOs and NGOs. Just like with social media, there's a lot of legislation of trying to control and prevent. I do want to point out that within Israel, there's some amazing organizations. B'Tselem, Breaking the Silence. These are Israeli groups that are doing phenomenal, beautiful work of trying to get information out. So, another source is Breaking the Silence, actually. You can, yeah, and Yesh Din, is it? Yesh Din, and so there's some Israeli organizations that you can literally sign up and go on their websites, and that's firsthand. Breaking the Silence are ex-Israeli soldiers who are actually saying, this is what we're doing, and this is what we did, and I regret it, and this is wrong. And I use a lot of them as testimonials on my website, actually. So, so there are some amazing organizations who the Israeli government is trying to stifle, actually, and close down. And so it's really tough. It's a very tough environment. But yeah.
I'd like to ask you about because I feel curious about, because of, I mean, the Israeli government also will have their explanation about why they are doing like that. So I just want to know why their explanation why they are doing it, and just with that, I want to know about your comment on the Israel government's explanation.
Mm-hmm. So, from Israel's point of view, if you're talking about the kind of government line, it's we need to occupy, or they actually, it's a security thing. And they'll always throw in that word security. Under any kind of criticism or any kind of, okay, but what's going on here? There are two words they'll throw at you: security and Hamas. It's a trap. You know, it's like these two words are supposed to suddenly make everything else okay. And it doesn't make everything else okay. And the truth of the matter is, if you occupy a people, why are the people who are occupied supposed to make you secure? You are illegally in their land, destroying their homes and their olive groves and building illegal settlements all over their land, aiding and abetting it, financing it, subsidizing it, encouraging it. And yet you want to be secure? It doesn't make sense. So they use security as a sort of red herring or a smoke screen. And that's the sort of reasoning they'll give you. Now, if you go to the far-right government within Israel, they will actually tell you how it is. The land is ours. God gave it to us 3,000 years ago. And it's going to be a Jewish, entirely Jewish state, including Judea and Samaria. That's what they will refer to as the occupied Palestinian territories. And they are following exactly what the original Zionists pre the state of Israel said it would be: a Zionist settler colonization enterprise. You know, so it's let's put it this way. Has anyone heard of the very famous rallying cry, a land for a people, a land without a people for a people without a land? Does that sound, you probably don't know it, but what they were telling people for external approval is, oh, okay, we're going to create a state called Israel, but it's empty. Don't worry about it. It's a land without a people for a people without a land. The Jewish community around the world who have suffered incredibly, and it was a solution for their victimhood and their pain and suffering. And so they said it's a land without a people for a people without a land. But it was pure sophistry, nonsense. It was for external consumption so everyone would approve it. And you can see decades later, it clearly was not a land without a people. There's an entire... The Palestinians didn't fall from the sky. They've been there. They are essentially the descendants of all the indigenous populations on that place on planet Earth for centuries and centuries and centuries. That is who the Palestinian people are. They're just the descendants of all those people. That is why you had Jewish Palestinians and Christian Palestinians and Muslim Palestinians. Palestine was the place of the gangbang of occupations. Israel is not the first or the last in that sense. We've had the Assyrians and the ancient Egyptians and the Canaanites and the Israelites and the British and the Turkish. So I've gone way off track there, but anyway. So security is the argument they give when they're trying to be diplomatic. But what we're having is a very right government at the moment who are actually being very open about it. And some of the people within Israeli government are calling for, like, let's mass expel. Let's get even more Palestinians out of Palestine. They no problem. So they're being more honest about it, actually, in a kind of warped way. Yeah.
Do you believe increasing the amount of knowledge in the world about this will actually stop it from happening or remedy the situation, looking at the history of occupations throughout our interaction
Yeah.
with each other?
Look, I think with sort of 19th century imperialism, you could get away with it, right? But if you look at the 21st century, it's much harder to get away with, except in the case of Israel-Palestine. So whenever we see it happening anywhere else in the world, there is uproar and there is kind of like, okay, no, this isn't acceptable, or, you know. When it comes to Palestine-Israel, it's very intractable. Yes, there's various reasons why. But if you look in history at whether it's sort of the Middle Passage, civil rights movement, South African apartheid, the Holocaust, in those darkest moments, the majority probably couldn't see the light. But they were brought to an end. They did end at some point. Things were resolved. I'm not saying to perfection. I'm not saying that the trauma is not still there or that things couldn't be better. But I'm saying that sometimes when you really think, oh, is it ever... You have to imagine it better and it will become better. You have to be part of that change, and change will come. And there's so George Bernard Shaw, the great playwright, anyone? No? Okay. George Bernard Shaw, he said, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man or woman. So I say get unreasonable, and things will shift. But it's not an on-off switch, you know. It's not like on-off. It's a process, tipping points, you know. It's shifting consciousness. So I do believe with time it can, yes. I do. I'm optimistic in that sense. The fact that we're sitting here today is a positive thing. So. I don't know. There's someone here, and there's one here, and then I don't know. Do you want? Oh, and that one. It's up to you. If you. I don't know who should. It's okay. Okay. Go for it.
What do you think the U.S. can gain from all the funding they're giving to the Israeli government? Like, what I feel like the United States only gives funding to nations that will, in the future, benefit them. So, what do you think their agenda is in funding the Israeli government?
Look, I think Noam Chomsky actually has written all about this. So I definitely say to you, sort of read a lot of his work, and he will cover it way better than I could ever. Yeah, look, America has always obviously provided funding and support to, you know, allies who can basically benefit them, and then when they technically stop benefiting them, maybe they don't provide it. In the case of Israel, that relationship is so deeply entrenched in your government. It is so deeply entrenched. It's very, very hard to kind of, even when the mutual benefit has ended, because originally, of course, you had the whole Cold War, and you had the situation with Russia, and I don't know what, and so they needed their allies, and they wanted something very strong within the Middle East, and then, of course, you had the oil element, so that was also important to have your strong ally within the Middle East. But times have changed, but the relationship has remained, not necessarily because it is desired. I mean, I don't know if any of you watched Secretary John Kerry in his sort of exiting speech about the illegal settlements in Israel. As a government, the Democrats at that point they're not happy with what's going on. But it really comes down to pressures and lobby groups. And the truth, guys, is you live in the best democracy that money can buy. It's a plutocracy. You're kidding yourselves if you think you're in this, you know, heaven of a democracy. It's not. It's the best democracy money can buy. So as long as people are paying, then that's how it works. So I don't really think that they feel that they're benefiting anymore. Huh?
That comes from a banker.
So I don't think they're benefiting in the way that they ever used to, and I think they've become kind of aware of that. But when it's so deeply entrenched, you know. And if you stand up to it from a political point of view, whether you're a senator and so forth, it might be at your own political peril, you know, and so, and again, that's why these sort of grassroots initiatives are really important, because otherwise the system is broken. So.
Can you give me the name of the Noam Chomsky book?
The specific book. Oh God, can you think of which specific? No, just. He's got many, but he talks a lot about why.
His most famous is manufacturing consent. Okay. So I would start with that because it explains to you the manufacturing of American public opinion on different things.
And also, I was going to say how the world works. Yeah. That's a good one, because there's a series of his sort of essays and interviews, and he goes into a lot of why these relationships exist and how, you know, they've changed. Yeah, and he's endorsed my films, so that's good.
So let's take one last question, right? Or do we still have time? Okay, so question in the back, which one? Sorry, this is on the floor, so you have to raise your voice.
Would you be able to repeat the first title of the first book that you said?
Manufacturing consent.
Manufacturing consent. So manufacturing consent and then how the world works. I mean, those are starting points. No. But listen, I mean, I'm going to stay here anyway. Oh, okay.
I teach Cervantes. You know,
You teach, sorry? Sorry.
I teach Cervantes works. You may know. Cervantes wrote the famous book, Don Quixote. No?
Yes, of
And I
course.
would just,
Yeah.
I just would like to bring, as we are closing, bring attention back to the work, the fantastic work that you have done.
Thank you.
Because this is what artists do. This is the function of the humanities, of art,
Oh, yeah.
to speak up for the voices.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Thank you very much and for following the steps for such great.
I was going to say that basically, I have this on my production company website, but true art always has a role and responsibility to take a stand, because the fundamental role of an artist is to help people shape their point of view in a way that liberates us. That is the purpose of art. Without that, it's purely aesthetic. Its function is purely aesthetic. So I totally agree with that. And actually, that's something, I didn't say that, by the way. It was David Dormino, who's an artist, who did the sculpture. Has anyone seen Anything to Say? It's the 4 chairs, where you have Julian Assange and Snowden and Manning standing on the chairs, and then there's one empty chair. Did anyone see that? No? That's a fantastic piece of art. And the empty chair is to say, well, it's inviting, who's next? Who's going to stand up, you know, and speak out? It's a beautiful piece of art. Anyway, David Dormino is the guy who made the art, and that's what he said. True art always had a role and responsibility to take a stand, because the fundamental role of the artist is to help people shape their point of view in a way that liberates us. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm happy to stay here for a few more questions if
Yeah,
you
we
feel
have
it's up to you.
time. Do you have any other questions? Don't be shy. Go ahead. But you have to raise your voice. I'm sorry, because this is
I died?
it's causing static.
Okay.
Are there going to be any future seminars discussing this? Where can we find information? Where can we find local places that will hold seminars regarding this?
I think she might be your source. I live in Dubai. So
Yeah. I'm
so
so sorry.
I will come back, I hope, and hold sort of all sorts of things. But I think
Sure.
somehow to kind of connect, and she'll let you know where there are things going on. And
So
thanks for that.
we do have an active agenda for SIMES, and you can find the information on our website, cimes.csusb.edu. Again, SIMES, CIMES. And we actually, for those of you who are going to be fortunate and be in Dr. Danny Zway's class, same class in spring, we have 2 amazing upcoming events. The first one is a panel of an Israeli American scholar, gender studies, and a Palestinian American scholar from San Francisco State. The Israeli American one is from Sunny, from New York. And they are going to be talking about the intersection of race, gender, and sexual orientation in the context of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And we will also have another film screening and another filmmaker in May. Also, it's going to be probably in your class, but I'm not sure. And it's going to be the Jordanian film Veeb. Have you heard of
right,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, which
But it's
is
not
not
Palestine.
necessarily
No,
political.
yeah.
It's more of historical, cultural film. Very fascinating, actually. And we will have one of the producers actually to come for a Q&A as well. We also might, we might have at the beginning of April an activist from Syria, a refugee activist from Syria. We're still negotiating the details.
I want to say, I mean, if you start following on my social media, I'm always keeping that dialogue alive. So, I'll always share specific articles. I read my articles. I don't just share things. And I sometimes comment, and so it's an easy way for you to kind of stay in touch and start to understand things a bit more. And you can always just message me if you want a little bit of context. I don't always answer super fast, but I do answer pretty much everything at some point. But if you're on the social media, you'll, at least I'm filtering for you. So again, sorry, from the social media point of view, I'm always got my finger on the pulse, my ear to the ground, but I'll filter. I won't be presenting everything. It's too much. So start reading the things I share, and you'll start to learn a lot more.
Someone someone had her hand here, and I can't remember. Yes, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to know where the first film where you filmed it at, like the location.
Right. I filmed in Dubai. So the beach looks like it's sort of in Europe or somewhere. It was in the UAE in a place called Fujairah. It was in the middle of summer. Now, I don't know if you know how hot it gets in the UAE in the summer, but it's around 45, well, sorry, American temperature is different.
It's probably like 120.
It's insane. It's insane. And we filmed in the summer, so it looks like it's cold and it's windy. But there was a guy fanning. I was just beads of sweat. It was it was the most miserable, uncomfortable, thus the crazy hair. And but it appeared like it was cold, and it was supposed to appear freezing, but it was fire. It was fire. And then the people in the water, of course, was in a swimming pool with the green screen, and that was pretty intense. Actually, we were literally, they were in the water all day. Their skin was completely shriveled by the end of it. And the poor guy who drowns, essentially, the one who goes underwater, we had to tie weights to his legs. We had scuba divers in the pool, you know, and going up and down, the guy was just exhausted. I mean, it was so it was pretty intense, but it was Dubai. The last film was filmed in Lebanon because the director, because by the way, I'm the writer and producer and then the founder of the company. And I guess the voiceover and all that. The director is Lebanese, and so he could not, if we wanted to film in Palestine, he would not be allowed to enter, so by the Israeli authorities. So we filmed right next to Palestine, which is Lebanon. Yeah, I saw a lady over there, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Right. Okay. So I can't. Right. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, 10 years is quite extreme. Even though, by the way, the maximum someone can get for throwing a stone has been taken up from a number of years to 20 years, actually, which is insane. So I was explaining, though, if the boys are convicted, then they are basically imprisoned. It seems to be, and this is as per the report, so you read at the end the UNICEF report. It seems to be a systematic process. It's institutionalized. It's a process, in my opinion, of breaking a society. What do you do when you've taken someone's land and someone's freedom? You've got all the checkpoints. You've got all the permit systems. You're living under occupation. What is the most valuable thing to any human being on earth is their children. And so at this point, it's a fear, it's a form of infiltrating fear and breaking a society and their will and their resistance. Because the Palestinians have been resisting for decades, resisting. So this is how you break a society. And if you go to Breaking the Silence, which is an Israeli human rights organization, not a Palestinian human rights organization, they will validate my words. So it's not my theory. You have Israeli soldiers saying, this is what we do to intimidate and humiliate and break the people that we are occupying. So, yeah. Yeah, no, it depends. So if the kids are kept, they're kept. I mean, it's not a civil framework. There's not, what you would do if your child was taken today is you'd go to the police station, or you'd go and you know, these children are not taken in that kind of system. So the parents don't even know where they've been taken sometimes. That's the whole idea, is they have to go looking, where's my child? There's, oh, he's probably been taken to this, you know, outpost and this place, and I don't know what, and they're transferred outside of Palestine into Israel, which is illegal in international law. There's a whole, it's not the same as a child being taken in any other system. So it is a complicated, messed up process. But if you go onto the website, you can have a read, and you'll get more detail under the children detention section. You'll get more detail on it. And
can I add just probably like a Marxist political economic perspective to this? I totally agree with you that it's a systematic process of institutionalized ethnic cleansing. And as one unknown Palestinian activist once told me, you know, those are the people who are by the wall and fighting every day for their lands. You know, like the West Bank, if you take it, so you have Gaza and you have the West Bank. The West Bank is like another prison, but the difference in the case of the West Bank is usually you have prisons to keep people in, but in the case of the West Bank is to keep people out, to kick the Palestinians, to make life so hard for them
Right.
that they would
Yeah.
choose
To
leave
leave.
their country.
Yeah.
And so it's a conflict over land and resources more than anything
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
Remember, this is the original purpose of the whole, like the creation of the conflict was over land and then over natural
Exactly.
resources in that
Yeah,
area. And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
if you take people's, like babies, like children are the most precious thing in people's lives. So many Palestinians basically pack, if they could, if they have the ability and leave because of their fear for their children. So it's a very successful ethnic cleansing
Yeah.
mechanism.
Yeah.
Like they do a lot of things and this is just one other step.
Yeah. Yeah. If you make life so difficult for people, then eventually, they don't want to be there anymore. They'd rather live somewhere else or a different kind of life somewhere else. And it's like a pressure cooker, Put enough pressure in there and then take the lid off and hopefully everyone kind of, Yes, yeah, and this is why I mentioned pre-establishment of the State of Israel. Very honestly, a Zionist settler colonialization process. Very clearly, over land and water resources. So.
Can I make a announcement? First of all, thank you so much for being here. We really
Pleasure.
wish you all the good luck. Second of all, I want to thank the whole class because some of them have a class of 8 and have been very polite and
Yeah.
considerate to the students. So here's what I'm going to tell you. For today's quiz, I'm so sorry, I just have to make a quick announcement. The famous book by Noam Chomsky is called Fateful Triangle. It talks about Israel, United States, and the Palestinians.
That's a good one, yeah.
Here's the- Today's password is Gaza, in honoring of the Gaza. Gaza is that very small land that they're talking about. It's called G-A-Z-A, with no capital. Go is the capital word, but put it G-A-Z-A. For today's, Nizam is here to collect for our dinner, and really thank you for everybody.
Thank you, yeah. Great. Thank you.
On behalf of the Science, thank you very much, everyone,
Yeah.
and thank you for our wonderful speakers.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm happy to sort of.
And
Is this
she's-
still on?
She's available if you have questions. We have
Yeah, good. You wanted to ask another question, I know. and then-
Where are you from or whatever?
Is this still on?